The White Tiger is a new Netflix American film directed and written by Ramin Bahrani, an adaptation of Arvind Adiga's 2008 novel of the same name, telling the story of Balram and his rise from a poor villager to a more successful entrepreneur in modern India. It's got a bit of a crime epic feel to the story, although maybe a little bit more of a personal feel to it. Art, what did you think about this splashy new Netflix release?
It really hated Slumdog Millionaire. This is a movie that, like you said, it's adapted from a novel for Netflix and comes from a director who I didn't like the last movie that he made, Fahrenheit 451 with Michael B. Jordan over for HBO. But I really did like 99 Homes.
Even before that, he made a lot of really interesting movies, very small movies like Chop Shop or Man Push Cart, but quite famously, he has the sign of approval from the late Roger Ebert. He will tell you that himself if you watch some interviews.
Every interview, he lets you know that he still has that seal of approval. So he is a pretty good director. I think he even told me he's a teacher, so he definitely has like a lot that he's learned from the craft, and a lot of it is displayed here. Like I said, sometimes it's like really in your face. Like he lets you know you are not. Literally, a line is, "You are not going to be able to win this through a game show." It's like, all right, shots fired. And then they they shoot shots at everybody, including themselves. It's a movie that I guess has been pitched as satire. It's kind of got this Wolf of Wall Street type edge, but in a place where things are still growing, where there's a very distinct difference between the side of India, as he says, where the men have the big bellies, and then the other side of India where the men, they're starving. And he sees himself as that servant who's just trying to make it up until he realizes that he can make it actually all of it up and become even bigger than that.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Slumdog Millionaire tries to give you the story of a poor, low-caste Indian man who works his way up from rags to riches, it does so in like a very fairy tale form, right? Like Danny Boyle's movie, I don't think it really even tries to portray itself as reality. It's this amazing coincidence, happenstance, Forrest Gump type of situation that has landed Dev Patel's character in that situation, whereas here the Balram character is much more of a scrapper. I like the comparison to The Wolf of Wall Street. I thought about Goodfellas, which is not necessarily to say that this is a film in that league, but it's got that very personalized voiceover that is very entertaining. I think maybe even a movie like Buffaloed, it does a similar thing where it puts you in the character's head and gives you all of the inner turmoil and attitude that he has as a form of filling in the blanks about the society, his analysis of how certain people act, his analysis of how different Indian people have a certain servitude towards them. And it's a breakdown of Indian society that feels much more lived in than a movie like Slumdog Millionaire, and then I think we've gotten from at least American-produced movies on India. It's a really interesting story, although I think in talking about its relations to a film like The Wolf of Wall Street, I think the picture of Balaram's life that The White Tiger tries to give you is maybe a little bit more narrow than the tone of the film makes you think. I think it tries to portray like he's going to show you his whole life story, and then it's very kind of narrowly focused on this one part of his life where he is the driver to this guy named Ashok.
And I did like that aspect of it because it's showing you kind of his come up, because the entire time he's also, we'll get into spoilers more in the second half, because I'm curious to see what parts of the book didn't get adapted over, because I know the book is a really, it's been hyped up for a while. I believe the director has been wanting to adapt this for a bit, but Netflix also has, and I have it right here, The Devil All the Time, a movie, and I think this is exactly what I would compare it to. One where if you read the book, there is a lot in here and a lot of intricacies that when you make an adaptation, and this one's also pushing it 2 hours, 5 minutes, it still doesn't mean it's going to get everything in there, right? And I think that there are aspects of it where while he's writing this letter and trying to show you how he comes up to be who he is, it's that dip in trying to come back into his own family, into his own friends, and he realizes like what? This isn't how they live. Why are you even looking down on me? Because it's kind of like that, trying to live in both worlds with the rich while still trying to be home, trying to divide the money that he's getting. But then everything else that he learns is that the entire system that they have there isn't necessarily beneficial to everyone, and that you kind of have to break some rules in order to get ahead. And I did like that aspect of it. Like you said, he focuses on a lot of things, not just the business side of it, but religion, and how you kind of have to be sly while at the same time very, truthful. You have to be honest while also lying through your teeth in order to get the things you want.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a side of India that we don't get covered a lot. We talked about Sir on one of our streams, which is also on Netflix, a movie that kind of covers that servitude. And this is the complete opposite of that. All the niceties are thrown out the window for this movie, and that is an aspect of it that I like.
He's definitely a hustler throughout, and that's some of the
100%.
most fun and engaging stuff in the movie is when you get to see that hustler aspect to him. I think about when he's in the car and doing the little pray maneuver just to kind of get people on his side and win them over. I think it's moments like that are really the most exciting maybe in the film, and maybe I wanted a little bit more of the scheming, because ultimately it comes down to a relationship story, basically, and how much how much Balram is willing to put himself through. And I think it's worth also pointing out Adarsh Gourav, who in this role is just very watchable, very engaging. You really believe how he evolves throughout the film.
And supposedly, I think this is the first film that he's led as a lead. It's not his first film completely, because I know he was in My Name is Khan. But I thought he did a pretty good job. There's a lot of, own self things that he has to, belittle himself to a degree. And like you said, it's a relationship movie for a little bit of it. And where there's kind of a breakup that happens and such. All while he's trying to make it to the top. And one of the things that I really liked about it was there's a lot of imagery when it comes to things that are brought up early on. And I know that this is going to be a movie that's going to tick off a lot of people, because they are very blunt. Not only when it comes to the economy, but when it comes to class and how the rich people belittle him, but also how they want to make sure that he's not this religion or he's not that type of thing. And as he gets even bigger, one of the early lines in the movie is, "Hey, white man is done. This is the age of the brown and the yellow man." And he's just saying it straight out like that. Which, yeah, when you compare a lot of what's going on in the movie, it's this fight between the old heads and the new heads, right? The old heads are still focused in on the infrastructure that revolves around oil. They're more concerned about the internet, but he doesn't want to listen to the son. Meanwhile, the entire time he is, and he's realizing what he can do to be able to snatch it up. Kind of reminds me, like you said, the hustling part, kind of like a Silicon Valley, because they are trying to build their own Silicon Valley there in India, because you realize that at the end of the day, the biggest factor is people. And India has a lot of people. I mean, the reason we have this movie is because Netflix has recognized what India has,
Totally.
And yeah, they're a booming industry.
Yeah. I think to dive into spoilers a little bit now, and this is your chance to head out if you don't want to be fully spoiled to what happens in The White Tiger. As I was saying, the film really does take its time through this section where he is a driver to Ashok, and also driving around Ashok's girlfriend, Pinky, played by Priyanka Chopra. What did you think about Priyanka Chopra in this movie?
She's fantastic. I thought she was pretty good. I know she executive produced this movie, and she's been taken in a lot of roles.
I don't feel like I've seen her in a lot of different movies yet, but this is a really good role from her. Yeah,
I also just saw her in the Heroes one on Netflix, Robert Rodriguez's Heroes. So I'm getting a completely different look over here.
A big disparity.
Completely different, but I thought she did a great job with it, playing, like you said, the girlfriend of the really rich guy, and she's kind of the one who even lets him in on certain things, like, hey, you're not supposed to do this, things that his father never taught him, and that's what brings a really big realization to his character. He realizes that he doesn't have that hygiene that a lot of people do. He realizes that he's he wasn't told to act in a certain way. He doesn't have this etiquette. But a lot of that was because that's not what he was raised in. I mean, there's a certain part where he goes back home and they belittle him because he's not doing what the family expects him to do. Yet what he's doing is going to get him a little bit more ahead. Trouble, yeah, but at least it's going to get him more ahead than what they have him doing when he gets back home, when he's splitting up all that money. But I liked her character, and I liked, again, it really did feel like a romance between him and the dude. To the point that he was like, "Don't call me sir, you're not my servant." And it's this back and forth that they have with each other. until it leads to what the really big premise of the movie is. You and I loved First Cow. One of our favorite lines in First Cow is you either have capital or you have a crime. Mm-hmm. The rich people he serves have the capital. Only way for him to get that is the crime.
Yeah, and he kind of spends a lot of his movie sort of biding his time, sort of judging like what is worth doing something extreme. What is my life worth? And of course, you know, it gets into the situation where he attempts to cover up for Pinky running over a person, and then is almost implicated in that very same crime, kind of drives him to the point where, all right, if they're not going to care for me, then I'm done with them. I'm going to assert myself and take what I deserve. Did you buy that build up to his breaking point and that surge of violence with Balram and Ashok?
That's the part of it. I'm telling you. And I'm very curious to check out the book because I know a lot of people like the book. I feel that there's just those little moments that would have built it up more because you know he's listening in. There's that moment where they talk about the internet versus oil and his dad goes, no, we're not going to focus on that. But you notice that he's taking everything that he's learning from them and he is then going to apply it. Oh, they pay off police? Cool. Let me get that money to make sure I pay off police. That will be an obstacle that's out of my way. He is practically taking notes, and I wish there was more of that. So when it gets to the violent side of it, we could have seen it a bit more. That was kind of surprised.
It didn't feel like it was a planned thing. It almost felt like he was a spur of the moment, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the thinking there. Like, obviously, it's hard to see a character's thinking, but, you know, it becomes this catalyst for him to move to Bangalore and to switch his identity and to start this new business. And I wish there was almost a little bit more of the plotting to show us that path, because it does sort of feel like a strange off-ramp, particularly because I think the whole section in Bangalore, to me, is the part where I would have liked to have seen a lot more. They kind of speed through that last section where now suddenly he's this entrepreneur, suddenly he's this man with power, and that honestly to me is maybe the more interesting part of the story.
Exactly, because again, it begins with him narrating, and the entire time that he's narrating, he's kind of telling you what you have to do. And I do like his narration when he tells you either have to commit it like this, you know, don't. Again, we're naming all these big things like Wolf of Wall Street. You were saying Goodfellas. Look, No Country for Old Men. He kind of has this perspective. Where he's coming and going like, yeah, those tales are old. The way that those things end, those are fairy tales, you know. You don't just serve the master, kill him, and then have this idea that you're going to be getting with guilt. That's not the guilt. It's waking... it's such a good line. It's waking up still thinking after you've committed it that you're still a servant to something else. Lines that are really cool and at the same time come off kind of like a YA novel where it's like, clearly a writer wrote all this for you.
Yeah.
So, I'm very curious to see what else may be missing within the book that could have been translated over. But I do like the journey that the character goes on. And like I said, if anything, we wanted to see more. 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 5 minutes already. I still wanted to see more of his journey and how it is that he got there and what he was going to do next, because he does things even a little bit differently. I don't know if this would have a sequel of any sort, but the way that he builds his own Uber practically, and the way that he goes about making sure that even events that come back to haunt him again, but through another driver, what he does to reconcile that, because a thing that it misses for sure is...
all that stuff is really interesting.
It is... But it's like you're also glossing over that you yourself are going to become the exact thing that you think you're not going to be. Because you can't just give someone a job after you murdered them. That is just going to, at some point, create a grudge, which puts you back into the same system. And it kind of doesn't go there.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bit of an acknowledgement of that through the voiceover, but it doesn't really settle there. And I think we both would have liked to see more of that, which in a way is praise for the film itself. That I think I would have preferred like a mini-series version of this where we get to spend a little bit more time on each chapter in this journey. But that's because I liked the story and I liked following the characters, and I thought the performances were charming, even if maybe structurally I was confused by some choices that they made. But yeah, it's a pretty entertaining tale, and I'd be I'm expecting this one to be a pretty decent hit for Netflix, considering that it's going to have some international appeal.
Yeah, it's definitely going to expand, I think, reach more eyeballs, and great performance from Adarsh. Great performance from the other two as well. And Priyanka's now executive producing, so they're going to make it worldwide. I'm curious to see what people think about this one.
Which is the most powerful Jonas maybe after this.
Yeah, easily, hands down.